Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Chelmsford Tonight. This is the show where we highlight the people and places in Chelmsford and the surrounding areas that make it such a great place to live and work. I'm Karen Woodrow, owner of Visiting Angels Senior Home Care, and I'll be your host. We're right here in Chelmsford. This March marks Women's History Month, a celebration of women and their contributions to history, society, and culture. One way women make a difference in our country is by expressing themselves at the ballot box. While suffragist Susan B. Anthony was born in Massachusetts, I couldn't find a connection to Chelmsford, but that's okay. With me tonight are two women who make a contribution every day to our local elections. Thank you for joining me, Carrie, Meikle, and Mary Frantz, members of the League of Women Voters of Chelmsford. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what is the League of Women Voters?
Well, the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that believes voters should play a critical role in democracy and that focuses on voter education. The League was founded, you talk about the history of the women's movement or whatever, it was founded in 1920 by the leaders of the women's suffrage movement. It was sort of an outgrowth. Once they got the amendment passed, then the organization reorganized as a League of Women Voters.
That's great. They were sort of putting their money where their mouth was,
sure
right?
Were. And so that was in 1920, now 102 years ago. And the Massachusetts League of Women Voters was founded 3 months after the National League. In Chelmsford, the League of Women Voters was founded in 1957. And so we've been around for quite a while.
So you're pretty well established.
We're
That's
well
great.
established, right.
So what are some of the things that the League of Women Voters in Chelmsford does to help with the elections?
Well, right now, our league is a very small group, but we focus each year. Our main event is our annual candidates forums. And we do that if nothing else. Right. And some years, unfortunately, in the midst of the pandemic, and that was all we did. But it has become the thing that we do every year.
Which is great. It's a place to consolidate all the candidates and hear their
Right.
different views. And we have a clip of your most recent candidate forum, which aired last week on March 24th. And let's take a look at that video.
To the candidates night for the Chelmsford election that is going to be on the 5th of April. On the stage at the moment with me, we have 3 women who are running for the 3-year seat as a trustee of your public library. Thank you for watching. Please be there on April 5th. The League of Women Voters reminds you that democracy is not a spectator sport. Thank you and good night. Thank you. Thank you all for watching.
So the purpose of this candidates forum was to present the candidates that are going to be on the ballot this Tuesday, April 5th, where we're having a local election for Chelmsford, and I think it was really good for everyone to hear from the different candidates. Are there other things that you do besides I know you do some educational programs through the library?
Well, this year we had with the new precincts in Chelmsford, which resulted from the every 10 years look at the census and allocate precincts and seats in Congress and State House or whatever. We did a program through the libraries. They've had great programs in the library through the pandemic, and it's done via Zoom. And we talked with the town clerk's office and the people in charge of elections in the town clerk's office about what's happened in terms of precincts and voting locations and all of that. So that was another voter education program.
Oh, that's great. So I heard Chelmsford got a couple more precincts, right. And people's polling stations might have changed. So yes. Can they turn to you guys to find out where they might be able to vote if it's changed?
Well, hopefully they've noticed when their census forms came that it was on their voting precinct. It's on the back of their census form. I think everybody, or at least registered voters in town, got a postcard in the mail. I received one in the past week. And all else fails, go to the town's website, and under elections, there's by street and address, there's a listing of precincts.
Great. So that should help everybody get out the vote on Tuesday. There's some important positions on the Chelmsford government that need to be filled. So how do you become a member of the League of Women Voters? Do you have to be a woman to join?
You certainly don't. League is not for women only, and we have had over the years not a whole lot of men, but we welcome any men who would like to join us.
That's great. And the roles are to organize these candidate forums, or just help get out the vote, or what would I do as a member?
We have over the years done voter registration drives, like in the high school and places like that. Occasionally, when, again, pandemic has sort of interrupted things, we do for informing people, bring in our legislators for meetings, things of that sort.
Okay. Carrie, you are a member of the League of Women Voters. What drove you to join the group?
So in recent years, obviously, on the national level, it's been very clear that it's necessary to pay attention to voters' rights and voters' education, and the last couple of national elections have obviously been incredibly contentious. So I definitely wanted to find a way in which to help with voters' education. 3 years ago, my husband ran for the Chelmsford Board of Health, and that's the first time I attended Candidates Night when he was one of the races that was contested. And that's how I started to become involved with the League of Women Voters.
So you had firsthand knowledge of how important the Candidates Forum was.
Yes. And, you know, Chelmsford town politics are complicated.
I've heard.
It's very helpful to have a framework in which to actually, you know, have questions like put forth, and people have, you know, a discussion which is regulated by a moderator. And really, you know, it's a very good chance for the voters to get to know the candidates. Otherwise, you know, you're voting by just, you know, whose name you recognize or if that person's incumbent, as opposed to actually really hearing the meat and substance of their platform. And that's what the League of Women Voters really allows for. It really digs into what are the issues facing town and facing each of the specific committees, whether it's school committee or the Board of Health or the Select Board. And I found that, you know, I would talk to my friends, I would like read the newspaper, I would watch, you know, the Select Board meetings, etc. But, you know, it really was great to have a nonpartisan forum in which to really hear what's going on.
I get that. That's great. Is there a fee to be a member?
Yes, it is. And when you become a member of the League of Women Voters locally, you're really becoming a member at all levels, the national, the state, and local. And the way it works is we take in dues locally, but then we pay a payment for each member to the National League and to the State League once a year. So our dues, which in Chelmsford are $60, but the bulk of that goes to local and state. And if I have another minute, I'd like to talk a little bit.
We'd love to hear it. What do you?
Well, in addition to the voter education piece of the League also deals with advocacy on various issues. And they obtain positions as to whether to advocate on something based on studies that are done within the League. And when the League of Women Voters got started in Chelmsford, that was a much bigger focus for members of the League to study issues and advocate for things in Chelmsford, like town manager form of government and various things related to the schools, most of which have been accomplished. At the state level and national level, that also occurs. And we regularly get emails from state and national about issues we should be lobbying our legislators on and working toward. And I will say that the voting and the bills before the state Senate and state House right now are things that the League at the state level are very involved in.
It's really great to hear that local Chelmsford people are working to push things through the state as well. Thank you so much for that. So, Carrie and Mary, thank you so much for joining me. You are two women that certainly deserve to be celebrated this month during Women's History Month. You are really making a difference for everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything you'd like to say to our viewers?
I would. Next Tuesday is Election Day in Chelmsford, April 5th. And democracy is not a spectator sport. Please get out and vote.
Everybody take your position where you belong in front of that ballot box. Thank you very much. We'll be right back after this break.
I love the Cranberry Bog. It's this open space where you can just walk around and just really be surrounded by nature. And my dog Dylan loves that place. As soon as he sees I'm going down that little pathway to get to the bog, he is like hysterical. I love this scripture that says, just be still and know that I am. And when I'm at the Cranberry Bog, I feel like I'm one with God. I do. It's just a spiritual place. I never knew it was there for so long, and it just goes to show you that sometimes we are like not paying attention. We have all these beautiful finds right up under our nose, but we're so busy being busy that we don't get the opportunity to just see what's right there. You just forget that you're in Chelmsford. You're just thankful that you found such a slice of heaven right in the backyard of Chelmsford. Who knew, right? Who knew?
That was Cherrice Lattimore, Chelmsford resident, strolling through the Cranberry Bog with her dog, Dylan. To learn more about the Cranberry Bogs, meet Becky Warren. Becky and her family have been part of the fabric of Chelmsford for generations. Becky is a retired National Park Ranger and a Chelmsford historian. Thanks for joining me tonight, Becky.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So I personally love cranberry bogs, the working kind that produce those yummy tart pieces of fruit. But Cherrice calls this cranberry bog up here in Chelmsford a spiritual place, a little slice of heaven right here in Chelmsford. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about that?
That slice of heaven has been around for over 100 years. But it became a slice of heaven officially with Chelmsford and Carlisle in 1986. So a piece of land that maybe wasn't going to be a working cranberry bog anymore, but it became a piece of the conservation of those two towns, and it means it's available for everybody to use and to experience it.
Well, it really looks like a beautiful place. I was going, meditating, just watching Cherrice walk through there. So what's the history? How did it get here? So what I know about cranberry bogs is that Massachusetts is the second largest supplier in the U.S., second to Wisconsin. So we supply 30%, but I thought they were all like down south towards the Cape. What are we doing with one up here in Chelmsford?
Well, there were two brothers back in 1902 that said, Cape Cod shouldn't have all the cranberries. We need to have our own bog here in the town of Carlisle. So they did a little bit of research and they bought 400 acres of land.
Wow. With the intention of putting a cranberry bog?
Yes.
Wow.
Now, I bet there might have been a few cranberries wild in that area, but what I've read is it was perfect pasture land. It had River Meadow Brook, it had marshes, it had open meadows, and it was a great grazing location for wildlife or for livestock. But these two brothers were entrepreneurs, and they wanted to make some money. And, in 1902, their idea was let's make our own cranberry bog up here, the northernmost part of Massachusetts, to have a cranberry bog. And they did it. They bought the land, they bought the water rights to be able to flood the bog, and then by 1905 they had an operating bog. Now, there was a lot of work that they had to do because they actually had to plant cranberry plants and bring in sand and bring in other peat in order to plant all those cranberry plants. So they did about 40 acres of cranberry plants. And so it's all planted. It was all done by hand.
And by hand?
By hand.
And when did this interesting piece of tool come about?
Well, so they planted the plants, and after a few years, the cranberries started to produce, the plant started to produce cranberries. And this would be the scoop that you would use. You would put this, hold on to it, and put it through the plant, and it would pick the cranberries dry. So you're not in water, you're just walking through the plants. And this is what you would use to scoop them. You'd fill your scoop, and you'd empty it into a big bucket, and then you'd go back to scooping. So this is heavy. They had good muscles back then to be able to do the scooping. And that's called dry scooping, where the cranberries are there, you harvest them in the fall, you scoop them, and then you clean them. And those are the cranberries that get the better price if they haven't been in water.
Okay.
So
you did bring some pictures of wet picking. What's the difference?
So wet picking is, you could put a little bit of water in the bog and run a machine through it, and it would, kind of like an egg beater, it would beat the plant gently and make the berries come off and float in the water. And then another way of wet picking is to flood the whole bog and then have a different kind of machine that does the same egg beater. And the berries are hollow, so they float in the water.
Right.
And then you corral them. You get a kind of a netting to corral them all into one place, and then you use a vacuum hose and you suck them up into a container.
So that also sounds like a lot of work, and it's they're not as valuable, like you said. So I do have one question. So the Polaroids that you gave us are from about circa 1965, and one of them is a helicopter. What's that about?
So there's a lot to do to tend to cranberry plants, and sometimes just simply things like spraying for bugs. Back in 1965, that was one way to do that. But also for fertilizer. A simple way is to do it from the air. So it was not for picking, but it was for maintaining the bog.
Got it. So when Cherrice was out there with Dylan, I didn't see her picking any cranberries and nibbling them along the way. What happened?
So over time, those brothers did a good business, and then they sold the business. So they did it for about 10 years, and they sold it. And then for quite a few years, some local folks continued. There was a gentleman that hired a botanist, a biologist, and he wanted to make the best cranberries. So these two worked together for about 40 years. And then the daughters of one of the gentlemen operated it. And they hired, the folks that you saw in those older pictures was Frank Wojcik. And so Pat Wojcik, who's a current select person in town, that was her father that operated that cranberry bog. And he did that from the 1950s right up to 1979. And then Frank's son did it for a while. And then Mark Duffy of Great Brook Farm decided it's agriculture. He's got a dairy farm. Why don't I try to harvest cranberries as well? So
everybody was getting in on the game.
They were getting into the game. So he decided to try to resurrect those cranberry bogs, and he did. He started working with them, and then had a lease with the town of Carlisle. But in 2015, you know, it's as you saw from some of those pictures, it's pretty labor intensive to pick cranberries. And you don't really get a lot of money for cranberries. If you go to the store, they're not one of the higher priced items.
Right.
So it just didn't even become profitable enough for Mark to continue with it. So since about 2015, there hasn't been attention much attention to those plants.
So what's going on there now if there's no cranberries?
But there's great wildlife, because that's another benefit to having the water needed. Even back when it was an operating bog, it was a beautiful place to see wildlife. And now there may not be the cranberries, but there's great blue herons. There are beavers that are creating their own ponds, or helping to maintain some of the ponds.
Oh, maybe they'll get some cranberry seeds and do some planting.
No, they just might. So it's become a wonderful habitat for the beavers, for lots of wildlife, and a beautiful place to go for a walk, either quietly by yourself, read a book, as we saw. Lots of families are there, or if you're a bird watcher. It's a great spot to go bird watching.
Wow, it sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about the Cranberry Bog with us, Becky. It was great to talk to you.
My pleasure. Happy to do it anytime.
So if you want to hear more about Chelmsford from Becky Warren, tune in to the February 23rd episode of Sustainable Chelmsford, where she talks about a farm in the area. I love park rangers. They're full of wonderful knowledge about, about the wildlife. So we'll be back after this break with more of Chelmsford Tonight. Our next guest is Matt Guarente. Matt is the PE teacher at Chelmsford High School. He's also a coach, and he is the owner of Unlimited Abilities. Thank you for being with us, Matt.
Oh, no problem. My pleasure. Nice to be here.
So your company, Unlimited Abilities, which you own with your wife, Maria, it works to increase the availability of recreational opportunities for individuals with disabilities. So the program involves adaptive phys ed, and to explain that better, we have a video of you working with some individuals with this adaptive phys ed program. So let's see the video, and you can tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
So we like to start with a dynamic warm-up and then an instant activity. We really focus on teaching each stretch, each movement, and then each game as well. The instant activity is a great way to kind of get them involved, start the program off on the right foot, kind of gauge the mood, up the excitement, and we can really just build off of those two things going forward in the program.
So how did you get interested in this specialty?
So my wife and I have always been interested in working with students with special needs. At the high school, I created a class, Unified Wellness, where it's mainstream students combined with students with special needs. And I knew that it could be bigger, so we brought it to the outside as well to create these programs to focus on the movement, the social pieces, the lifelong skills that we both enjoy on our own time, but more so we love teaching to others, especially others with special needs or who need it more than we might.
That's great. So we have a picture of you and your wife, Maria, with, I don't know, it's sort of your catchphrase. I found it on your website where you say, everybody can. And I think it's really wonderful that you've taken your interest in PE as a PE teacher and your interest in kids with special needs and turned it into a business where everybody can.
So that quote is so perfect because we really focus on the ability of anyone. I tell my class, and Maria and I say it all the time, success is so different depending on who you are or what you're doing. There can be a million little pieces of success in any kind of activity or any kind of program as long as you look for it. And everyone can is such a good kind of strong base saying. It's simple, it's right to the point, and it's what we truly believe. Everyone can be successful in whatever they're doing, and we're just here to try to get the most out of them and help them with that.
That's great. I mean, everyone can, and if you can't, it's because you can't yet,
Yep.
right?
You're on the way. and we're just there to guide you to that finish line. And it's been great. We love working with the kids. It's great to see how much they grow and perform, and it's important for us to really break down the scale and get them moving, whether it's through fitness or we've done yoga or dance or just small-sided games. We'll cater it to whoever we're working with or all these kind of things to get them moving, to get them lifelong movers in, and more importantly, the social skills to be able to do those things outside of the program as well.
And it's very inclusive. It's anybody who wants to be part of this program or has these disabilities that can't maybe participate in another program gets to do what they want to do with you.
The good thing about our program is we're very open-ended on the ages. A lot of students with or people with disabilities, they age out of programs, or once they leave high school, the limitations really start to show. So we wanted to develop programs where if they age out or if they're out of high school or 24 or 28, they can come to our program and we can work with them in a fitness setting or in a social setting or play games or learn or just be out there with others, the opportunity to have fun, to play. And that's what we're really focusing on, is that older kind of level, as well as the younger level too, but we don't really have a gap at the top.
Great. When did Unlimited Abilities open up? When did you start this?
So last summer we did a camp in Chelmsford, and we had a decent showing throughout the month of August, which we plan to do again this summer too. So last August, and from there we've done a fall session. We have we're working with rec departments in the surrounding areas to increase our programs. We have one coming up next weekend actually, and then some down the road as well. So we're going on almost a year. It's been a quick year, that's for sure. I know not a lot of people have said that in the last year, but we're going strong, we're rolling, and it's been a great time. We like to see it grow.
Yeah, it'd be great if it grew. More towns could get involved, more people could get involved. I know that I was telling you that my son played unified basketball. He was a helper at working with kids with disabilities, and he found it so gratifying, like just being able to contribute, not competitive, just playing for the fun of the sport.
Well, the teaching aspect is huge. We break down the skill. With unified basketball too, it's a lot of sportsmanship, it's a lot of social ability that is so important to this population. We work on teamwork, we work on good game, cooperation, handshakes at the end. We teach them it's okay to lose. All those kind of things are incorporated in our programs, as well as the active part, where you saw in the clip. I'm teaching the knee drive. I'm teaching the hitting the ball back and forth, the hand-eye coordination. Those types of skills are important, and we really like to enhance those for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being with us and talking about your program. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This was great.
And we'll end this segment with those important words: everyone can. So that's our show tonight. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your evening with me. I hope you enjoyed the show. We will be back in a couple of weeks, and I want to thank my camera crew, Bob and Dee, and of course Pete up in the control room, and John. Spring is coming. Time to head back north. We miss you up here. Thanks everybody. Have a good night.
Number 2, y'all ready? Glad to be here, Lord. Folks, nice to see you. Glad you made it. Open up and maybe hit the double ball, man, that's a knock in. Well, everybody, look at you, Johnny, son, there,